Hi everyone, welcome to the Majlis. My name is Yasmin Khoyatler, and with me today I have Dr. Ibrahim Almojel. Dr. Ibrahim, thank you for being here today.
No, thanks for having me. حياكم الله جميعا.
Thank you. Dr. Ibrahim is the co-founder of Khwarizmi Holdings, which has investment entities in PE, VC, and real estate. He was formerly the CEO of the Saudi Industrial Development Fund, and before that he was also a part of Aramco for many years, particularly as head of the Wisayah investment arm. So Dr. Ibrahim, to get started, you've had a lot of experience as an investor in both the public sector and the private sector, and Aramco, which is sort of its own separate beast. Could you tell us how those roles have differed?
It's a great question. Many in investment don't really take the first step, which is what's the goal of the investment. You can't think of an investment as the same way, whether you are in Wisayah or Hassana or Khwarizmi or what have you. It's a function of the objective of that entity you're investing on behalf, or if you're investing for yourself, what's your objective? So usually when people ask me, what should I invest in, how should I invest? The first question is, what do you need the money for and when? So in Wisayah, because it's the Aramco pension, but it has a long-term view, we thought of endowment-like allocation, where we think of long-term investment growth to help us meet the liabilities with a little bit of a constraint when it comes to needing to disperse money. Mm-hmm. When you think in the government sector, whether SIDF or others, even as a development bank, we think of the developmental objectives more than the return. So the return is the constraint, not the objective. So we need to maintain the value of the money, but we maximize the economic impact. When I'm in Awqaf or I'm in Hassana, thinking of the objective for that money and when will it be needed and how much of it will be needed will help you assess your risk and liquidity profile, which will help you assess what's the best way to invest. So the difference between the different sectors is motivated by the objective of the investment. And if you know your risk appetite, when do you need the money and how much money do you need, you can really decide where and how to invest.
Mm-hmm. And as head of SIDF, as you mentioned, one of your goals was economic development. And so with Vision 2030, we saw a lot of different sectors emerge. What, in your opinion, were sort of the key industries that you wanted to invest in, that you wanted to see grow in the country?
So the beauty of Vision 2030, that it set a goal for all of us. So the destination is clear, and the destination is not linked to a certain cabinet member or a head of organization. So as head of the SIDF, I don't get to change the destination, which gives you alignment and longevity when it comes to plans. Within the Vision 2030, we were involved with the largest when it comes to economic impact, which is a National Industrial Development and Logistics Program, NIDLIP. The goal there is to transform the kingdom into an industrial hub and a leading industrial hub and a global logistics it's been 2 years since I left the government, so we needed to be the leading industrial powerhouse and a global logistical hub. To do that, we need to activate different sectors, beginning from energy, mining, manufacturing, and logistics, which cover the whole value chain. Hence, SIDF was transformed to serve all these sectors. You see the mining strategy introduced, the logistics strategy introduced, the manufacturing strategy introduced. And that's the beauty. Instead of each one working by itself, we have a clear destination for all of us.
Mm-hmm. And you expanded the mandate of SIDF as well while you were there. Could you tell us a little bit about your decision-making thought process behind that and what the results were?
So when we began, we were thinking, what's next? How to align SIDF with Vision 2030. But the beauty of the vision, that the vision is clear. So when we looked at the vision programs, the most relevant for us is NIDLIP. So we figured the best way to align SIDF is to become the main financial enabler of that NIDLIP transformation. So if I am the financial enabler of NIDLIP, everything else comes naturally. I need to expand the sectors to cover mining, energy, logistics, and in addition to manufacturing, I need to cover the different, I offer different products, not only be limited to one because of the different needs of the different sectors. And we needed to change the way we operate to be in line with the speed that's needed with Vision 2030. So the transformation was led by that destination.
And you're thinking along the lines of Saudi Arabia becoming a global logistics hub. Now, obviously, the positioning of it geographically lends itself to that. How do you think about that in an era where we're talking a lot about an increasingly globalized supply chain, but also increasingly hyper-localized?
So if I think of logistics and manufacturing and think what's the opportunity for the kingdom, I'll identify 3 global trends. First, as you mentioned, efficiency is losing to resilience. So while before we really optimized for the most efficient way of doing things, after COVID, people appreciated resilience, which is leading to more localized supply chains, at least resilient supply chains. Second, cheap labor is losing to automation. Third, scale is losing to customization. Everyone wants their needs served. What do these 3 global trends mean to Saudi Arabia? Efficiency to resilience, it's an opportune time where everyone is revising their global supply chain. So it's a time where people are already thinking about changing how they do business. And inertia is the most difficult thing to break. But since it's broken anyway, it's time to go and say, I am here, I'm ready. Cheap labor losing to automation, that changes the economic measure from labor to capital. So you can compete with automation, you can compete with capital, which we can offer, whether it's as loans or equity at efficient rates, or as infrastructure, land, equipment, or what have you. And socially, we're one of the few countries where this shift to automation is actually conducive to job creation, not against job creation. I can have a factory with 100 employees, maybe 90 are Saudi, 10 are Saudi and 90 are not. The 90 are on short-term work visa. If I upgrade the factory to only employ 40, but 20 or 30 are high-value add jobs, I can double the Saudi labor force from 10 to 20. So while automation might face some labor resistance in other economies, it will be appreciated in Saudi. Third, scale losing to customization. We are in the center of a region that's most underserved. Whether it's Africa, Central Asia, Middle East, globally, traditionally, historically, hasn't been really served by the global manufacturers or global brands. So as we demand more customization, it creates a local market, a regional market, that's opportune to be served. So with these 3 global trends, Saudi can become a global manufacturing powerhouse and a leading logistical hub.
And these are all good points for why Saudi could become more competitive on this scale. What are other ideas that you've thought about, say, I know you worked on special economic zones as well, when we think about how to position Saudi as competitive against other Middle Eastern countries as a global logistics hub?
So I'm currently the chair of the Saudi Integrated Logistics Zone company, which operates the free zone in Riyadh Airport. And we've seen a lot of demand. Apple was announced, other companies, Lenovo was announced, and other companies are announced to build it in Saudi. We have a lot of competition, but the market is large enough. The region is in the center of East meets West. The region is well connected, whether through ship line or flights. So I don't think it's more in my mind of a blue ocean than a red ocean. Growing my market share most likely means taking it from other regions, not taking it from within the region. So when you see lately, as people pitch Riyadh versus Dubai or Riyadh versus this, you see both are growing, not this is growing instead of that. You see tourism is growing in Saudi, but also growing in the UAE. And I think that's the right mindset to cooperate within the region, which the government has been leading it and saying it, which will help us all capture a larger market share globally. Because this region as a whole didn't take only a minute share of their equivalent GDP or population equivalent of their global share.
Fair. And when we talk about the development funds in the country more broadly, we've seen that since the announcement of the vision, they've grown significantly in size, but their business model has fundamentally changed also. So before there were more direct grants, now there are a lot more loans or microfinancing models becoming more popular. Why do you think that is?
People like funds like SIDF has been always given loans, but there was some push to help companies with grants through the old PIF or old direct government support. And the idea now is we need to ensure your sustainability. So is that the loan is good to ensure the sustainability of that fund and will help other companies, but it's also important to ensure the sustainability of the business. If the business is only working because they gave it some money in the beginning, but then it can't sustain itself, you're not helping anyone. If you create a sustainable business that can grow and compete in its own right, but you help it with long-term loans at low prices to just jumpstart and weather the teething pains, but it can sustain itself later, you're creating competitive businesses that will create more other competitive businesses. That focus on sustainable capital, on competitive businesses, is mainly came with the Vision 2030, and it's wonderful to see its impact on the economy.
And speaking of keeping these companies and businesses sustainable, so you're on a lot of boards, including SNB and Hassana, the government pension fund. When we think about businesses being sustainable and holding their own, how do you think about it as a board member? What do you need to see in a company that makes you feel comfortable?
So we'll talk about this in two ways, as a board member, but also what's happening in the regulatory framework. I think the changes that were led by CMA, albeit some are too tough, but the changes that happened with the CMA made us world leading. So if we see the size of the market, the liquidity in the market, the number of companies coming to the market, and the protections given to retail investors in Saudi Arabia, the governance requirements, the transparency requirements, you will see us at one of the top markets globally. So what's been happening through the financial program in the Vision, the financial sector development program in the Vision, we see the results of it directly. As a venture, our venture capital arm, when we invest in things, one of the competitive advantages I see in Saudi is our market, because people want to come and list in the Saudi market. We might have more tax, we might have more this, but because of the size and liquidity and the governance requirements in the market, you see a lot of investors coming in. One of the examples is ADIS. ADIS is an energy service company that was listed in the UK, was taken private. A couple of years later, was listed in the Saudi market. Its valuation multiplied by, I don't think, 4 or 5x after the UK market. And you see more interest of regional or sometimes global listed companies to move to the region and be listed in Saudi market. Now, that's the change that's happening in a market level and regulatory framework. For me, as a board member, sustainability means, first of all, you need to be doing good business. So are you making more than you're spending? If that's there, just are you a business and standing up or not? And if you are, then you need to ensure your sustainability regarding your stakeholders. So I first think of your employees. Are we doing well by the employees? Do we have proper succession? Do we have proper governance? Do we have proper delegation and systems that ensure the development and continuation of our workforce? Are we doing well with our clients? Are we financially viable because we are benefiting from a monopoly or a market dynamic, or are we really offering a competitive service that people are happily paying for it? And how can we always exceed our clients' expectation? What about our shareholders? Are we giving them above market return? Because we might be doing well, but if it's better for the shareholder to invest in building a mall, we will not have capital coming in to our business, and all these people will be selling the business and going somewhere else. So to ensure the sustainability, I need to make sure I'm creating return on equity that is commensurate with the risk and liquidity restrictions they're taking by investing in this company. So when you think of all of this, you know you have a sustainable business. Then you have to think, do I have right to play? What's my impact on the community I'm operating in, whether it's environmental impact, social impact, how am I making my presence value add, not subtracting value from this? Because even if you can do it, even if you cover it for a bit, eventually it will not continue. People will make you pay for it. So it's smart to do well by the environment, smart to do well by the society you're operating in for the long-term sustainability of the business.
And you are also a VC funder. So I'm assuming when you talk about a lot of these things, a lot of it would apply to startups as well. So assuming all of that is the same, when we look at the Saudi or even the GCC market more broadly in venture capital the past few years, we've seen a lot of overvaluations. Do you think that this bubble is going to burst? How do you see it evolving?
So Khwarizmi, we have a VC arm, a real estate arm, a private equity arm, and now we're launching a manufacturing and infrastructure arm. So we see the different dynamics in different sectors. And the VC has been very, very interesting. So relative to the GCC, relative to other markets in the region, we see much higher valuation. But that's also a function of the valuation you see in the stock market. And the fact that you are not taking real currency risk in the GCC. So I can invest in Turkey, but I can make a killing in lira, but I'm taking a hit in dollar terms. So you have to adjust for that. Here you don't have to adjust for that because the currencies in the GCC are pegged to the dollar. So you don't take real currency risk by investing here. That translates into higher valuation relative to the market. Something else to keep in mind, there was this global, one of the largest, without naming it, but advisor to allocators, especially in private markets, told me an analysis they did on VC and venture early stage and growth in multiple geographies and compared MENA to LATAM, Southeast Asia, Southwest Asia, South Asia, and said when we adjusted for GDP per capita, population, and all these things, MENA should be $15 to $20 billion a year. We are at 3. So you will see more money than entrepreneurs and a bit more entrepreneurs than money, but in the larger scheme of things, we are way too early and we are way in the beginning of the growth of that business. And we should be at 15, 20 billion. We are only at 3. So like any other dynamic, in the beginning, you'll see this, but now, is it this? Maybe it's more valued, will be less valued, but the trend will go up for a while till we reach where we should be relative to our market economy size and population size.
Clear. And in terms of the sectors that we see a lot of startups playing in here, compared to a more mature market as well, let's say we're still, we look at a lot of software, we're looking at a lot of fintech, a lot of the X, but for the Gulf instead, importing ideas from the West. What do you think is required here? How can we give the push to the industry to go into industrial, into deep tech? Do you think it's a function of time? What is missing in the environment today?
So I'll leave manufacturing on the side a bit. We can comment because it's capital intensive, which is a bit different. But here, to move from the X of Saudi or X of MENA to deep tech, there are 2 aspects of this. There is where the money is flowing and where entrepreneurs are going. And if I am a smart, young professional Princeton grad who wants to who wants to do something in her country, if I can make $1 billion a unicorn by building the next Deliveroo, the next this or next that, why wouldn't I? Yes, so I think this is a function of maturity. In the first few years, we will see a lot of money, a lot of talent, young people excited, going to higher return for risk taken, which will be, I see an opportunity in the model. I don't have open banking, so I do lean. I don't have Warley Parker, so I do Iowa. I don't see secondary marketplace, so I do SOM. These are companies we all invested in, so I'm sure to only name the ones we invested in, or Calo, or what have you. And if I am a smart, motivated, driven individual, the return per risk clearly higher here. If I am an investor, I would think also, if I'm taking technology risk plus market risk and adoption risk, I will go where money, higher return per risk adjusted. So I think it will take its time to reach that after we make most of these low-hanging fruits. But then you see the government should be incentivizing this, and they began. So you see a Chaos deep tech fund. You see an initiative from Aramco for deep tech. You see an initiative from SVC for deep tech. And as they motivated, as SVC led the creation of all these VCs 5 years ago, you'll see them doing the same by creating that LP carrot for deep tech investors. And with that money, you will see more of the entrepreneurs coming in. I already began seeing entrepreneurs who do maybe not necessarily deep tech, but much deeper tech. So they're developing unique tech versus just a tech-enabled business. And I expect in 5 years, and we are not missing anything. We have smart people, smart money. It will just take its time to come.
And I think to take a step back, they're talking about, having smart people, smart money. When we look at the role of Saudi Arabia on the global stage, I think historically there have been negative views of, this is dumb capital, this is easy money for the Westerners, and we primarily import cultural, intellectual property. The more and more we're rising up on the global stage, at least, as a Saudi, in my unbiased opinion, I see that. What do you see our ambitions being as a middle power on the global stage?
So let me focus on my area with it, because there are a lot of ambitions. In Vision 2030, we need to be a leader driven by our Islamic Arab identity and our investment powerhouse. But if I'm wearing the allocator hat, if I am in a board of an allocator, or my old government hat, when people come to raise money, we still want to invest globally, we still want to diversify, but two things are changing. First, we are becoming a net capital importer rather than exporter. And that's not because of reduced revenues, but because of opening up the economy and a lot more opportunities. Second, as we see, our investment platforms are also investing in that. So when they see, let's say you're an emerging market investor, you want to come and raise money. 5 years ago, I'll tell you, okay, what are you doing to help us? You need to build an office, create an office, do something, invest some money here. Now, it's not that. If you're an emerging market investor and you haven't invested in the region or in Saudi, what does that tell me about you? How smart are you if you're not making money from this amazing energy we're seeing, where everyone is, the stock market is hot, startups are hot, in every sector there's growth that's happening. If you are a smart emerging markets investor and you haven't invested here, I'm not sure if you are that smart to begin with. So that dynamic changed completely. So it's never been really dumb money, despite the impression. But now it's much smarter, and we see opportunities that exist. Explain to me, why didn't you get exposure to this if you are a smart emerging markets investor? So we see a lot of dynamism. There was a report, an article 2 days ago that Saudi Arabia, in Politico, I think, Saudi Arabia is China on steroids. Not even Chinese growth, it's China on steroids. The opportunities here today are immense. People will think of it 10, 15 years ago, away from now, and say, I was in Saudi when this was just a dream, when they were just building this, when the World Cup was just announced, when it's all live and we see it, as we are beginning to see things around us now.
No, the energy is electric. And I think a lot of people are wondering, when I speak to people who visit from the US and Europe, investors or workers or founders, they want to know how to get into the ecosystem, but they don't necessarily know how.
Very easy. If you are a founder, you should seek investment from Khwarizmi. And if you are an investor, invest through Khwarizmi funds. We have multiple funds across different sectors. We are always happy to take your money. But jokes aside, I think Ministry of Investment been like the private banker for investors. You can come, they will sit with you, they will introduce you, they will become your advocate with the private and public sector. And Saudis in general are open. So if you talk to anyone, they will probably open their homes for you, introduce you to people, introduce you to friends, family offices. It's a very, just take the leap, buy a ticket, and visit the country. I think doors will be open directly.
I think that's one key piece of advice, and I see a lot of foreigners adopt it as well, as you can't simply come here for a weekend and then expect to get investment here. You sort of have to invest your time and energy into meeting the people and building a network here as well.
We should give them comfort. See, why is that? Because we are relationship based, not transactional based. What does that mean? That means if you come and set up a business and work with people, you're here for the long term. They value that relationship. So it's not that when a storm comes, you'll be left dry, or it is a relationship-based economy, relationship-based culture. It takes time to invest in building these relationships, but they will stay for a long time.
And increasingly strategic investments, not necessarily transaction-based investments as well. So we saw that with family offices, but even more broadly with government entities, and even some of the VCs here really seem focused on the long-term vision. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and ask about something that I know you're also passionate about, which is the empowerment of youth here, and emboldening them and mentoring them to rise in the workforce. So what do you see our roles being, or rather your role being as a youth myself, in terms of encouraging the next generation to become leaders?
Mashallah, I think you are a case in point. Strong education, tried multiple things, worked with leading things, and starting this. The youth we have in the country are simply impressive. So what changed over the last 20 years, I think, with the scholarship program, we have and the opening up of our youth are tech savvy, global citizens, digitally connected, educated everywhere, from leading universities in Saudi to regional universities in Saudi to China to California to even East Coast. We don't mind. No one is perfect, but anyway, they try. But we have amazing talent, and the opportunities are opening up. So the average age of an executive in the government, or a leader, or in a company, or in a startup, I think went by 20 or 30 years down over the last 5-10 years. So there are a lot of opportunities. I think the most important advice I would give is invest in yourself. As a youth, the best thing you can do for your country is to invest in yourself. There are so many opportunities that you can create or join in here. In mentorship, there are a lot of programs. I think one of the leading is 1937, that was started by Muhammad Rabzouni. They really help connect like a big little SIP kind of program for mentorship. Many entities or companies have that mentorship program, but honestly, just ask. Most of the time, the worst thing that will come if you ask someone for mentorship is you'll get one session with them. Maybe their time will not allow for a continuous relationship, but I doubt people say no for the first session. And that by itself is building your network and getting insight from someone that might really help you shape your path. So just asking, there's no harm in it. Another advice I give multiple times, like a professor in a class I took in creativity and innovation told us, and I'm sorry for repeating this, but I love that. She told us, you're all here at Stanford, you think you're great, blah, blah, blah. But you all had failures. I need you to write your resume of failures. And don't say, I did this, I failed, but it was better for me because no. I wanted X, worked hard for X, and I failed. Horrible exercise. And then after writing it, taking it like a week or 2 weeks later, I was like, I don't know how to show it to her or to my classmates. But then when the class said, she said, I'm not interested in seeing your resumes of failure. But what I'm interested in is for you to think, when you have a next step and you're worried about failing, look at this long resume and say, one more failure won't really hurt me, and just do it. Till today, it's like 20 years later, although I didn't want to admit that, but I still have my resume of failure, and it keeps adding.
You add on to
it. I can show you one after this, but it keeps growing. But try. It's a dynamic economy. People are willing. Everyone is betting on you. And they're okay with you trying again and again. Just invest in yourself and do it.
In more practical terms as well, when we talk about investing in ourselves, so obviously there's multiple ways to do that. You have a PhD. A lot of people now are wondering if it's worth, at any given point for someone like me, we're thinking of several different things. Do you start your own thing? Do you continue in a large corporation? Do you go into government? Do you go to grad school? How did you make that decision, and do you think it still holds for today?
So let me answer two questions. Like you embedded a question when someone like you is thinking about the different options, how to think about them, and then the PhD. I'll quickly talk about the PhD, then go to the deeper question and how to think about your next steps. But a PhD is relevant in one of three cases. Either it's something you want. As a kid, I always wanted to learn something that deep, and I wanted to go through that process. And you need to want it for its own right, not as a way towards something. If you don't, and you want it as a way towards something, then there are only two reasons to get it. Either you want to go to academia, now or later, you want to go to academia, or you want to really be an authority in a field. If you see yourself as the advisor on X, or the authority in X, or consulting on X, PhD always helps. And it's not only about what you learn during the PhD, and people take it because Dr. Ibrahim means he knows something about everything for whatever reason. But more importantly, because if you do it in the right PhD with the right professor, you learn how to learn, and you know that you don't know. That's the main important mark of expertise. So if you want to be an authority in something, or you want to go to academia, pursue it. If not, I don't think people, they think, will it help me in my job or my, if you're not doing a research-based job or a consulting-based job, or you're in academia, financially it will not help you. Will I do it again? I will do it again and again, because for me it was the first objective. Now, the embedded question you've had, when people come and ask me, I have these options. The first question I ask them, let's put that aside. Usually people feel lost because they don't have a path they see. And if I know one thing, is that whatever path you think you have will not happen. And as Roosevelt, I think, said, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. What is it about planning? It's about creating, instead of creating the plan, you should create the compass. What does the compass mean? It means figuring out how you want to evaluate your life. Not what, because you don't know what options will come to you next year, what challenges, what opportunities will arise. But you should know what success means to you. And is that these success is impact. No, habibi, and you can get impact by doing X. You need to be really honest with yourself. And even if there are things in yourself that you don't like to admit, make a distinction between the purification of self and what the self wants. Say, I want X. I don't like that I want X, so I want X, but I also want not to want X. Good, add it to that. Be honest with yourself. And for me, 20 years ago, again, 21 years ago now, longer than I'd like to admit, I decided how I want to measure my life. And I said at that time that, because I said impact initially, then I said, okay, go volunteer in Africa. So there are some selfish things you want. Be honest with yourself. So I figured, after read a few books, did reflection, decided then, and I still hold it till today, that I wanted to create a certain life for my future family. That if my kids get admitted to Princeton, or unfortunately need to go to any health,
Stanford, God forbid.
The opposite. I'm trying to be nice, but khalas, God forbid Princeton or Harvard, but go to Stanford, that cost is not an issue. And I wanted to have that net worth that makes that I create that net worth that makes that. It's not a huge amount. It's not flying private and going to this or that. It's a certain lifestyle that I measured, but if they need to go to a leading hospital for whatever reason, or they get admitted to a great opportunity, that cost is not an issue. Beyond that, I wanted impact. Then when I got the opportunities, I didn't know that Wisayah will come, or that vision will happen, or that VC will boom. Every time, every transition, I did a simple tree saying, I wanted that net worth, that life I want to create at that time for my future, now for my current kid. And which one will give me, and I have those two objectives. And as long I know how I want to measure my destination, you can evaluate the opportunities. The second thing about the compass is you need to be also kind to yourself in the journey. You need to figure out, assuming you succeeded, which work style do you enjoy? Are you the Warren Buffett or the Larry Fink? Are you Ma'al al-Iban or Ma'al al-Rabi'a? The advisor, the authority, Buffett, or the executive institutional building like Fink? figure out the work style you enjoy and say, this is how I measure the destination. But if I have options that equally lead me there, let me take it through the destination, the journey that I enjoy. Are you the creator or the grower? We discussed that before the interview. Not everyone is 0 to 1. I'm not certainly 1. But there are people who are 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 1,000. Find who you are. And if you figure out the destination, and then we are evaluating opportunities, see the one that will lead you to the destination. And among those, see the one that will give you the journey that you will enjoy the most. Mm-hmm. That's a long answer, but I figured I should.
No, it's. I feel like I'm getting personal coaching now, which is great. But to bring it back
I
around.
owe a lot to your father, Tara. He was a great coach.
To bring it right back around to the interview and to wrap up, I think one of the final questions I had was, we're talking a lot about the excitement that's happening in Saudi right now and foreigners wanting to be a part of this as well. One other thing I want to tackle as we talk about increasing Saudization is how do we balance between attracting and developing global talent here while also nurturing and prioritizing the national base?
I think investing in education will nurture and empower the national base, and making a distinction when you attract international talent. So there are two. I will divide them. If I am attracting international talent as entrepreneurs, founders, or business creators, the more the merrier. The economy is large, the region is large. Come, and if you are a founder from Estonia that wants to come to Saudi, hayak. As long as you're adding to the economy, working hard, building businesses, paying your taxes, and hiring Saudis and growing the market, come on in. And I don't see that that's a competition with local talent, because even local talent has to compete in a global. Mm-hmm. So I would rather compete with the Estonian in Saudi than have him or her compete with me from Estonia. Mm-hmm. When it comes to jobs in the public or private sector, I think the way it was addressed is through the Saudization. So where there is Saudization requirements and there is taxation on labor, but if someone is adding value in a specialization that's needed, blacks, we need them to come. We want to do our best to attract them to come so that they can enrich the institution they're in, but also train the other Saudis. We are a majority young population. Mm-hmm. So having more of talented expertise with gray hair helps all the young people, mm-hmm. even if they compete with the gray-haired people like me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahim. It's been a real pleasure today.
Pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this.